Showtime.
It's about that time.
Let's go.
You're right where you need to be. This is GCOM Radio.
Hardest radio station on the planet. Yeah.
Powered by Lyfeblood.com.
We certified.
And hosted by Nova Phoenix.
Give them that flavor.
Okay. What is going on, everybody? What's going on? Oh, man, it's glad to be back. I'm glad I'm here for a show on time. It's going to be on time. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for all those folks that have been checking out my show on the platform. I really do appreciate it. Truly appreciate it. That means my message is getting across. And you like the show, even in its broke down version. I can't wait for me to really bring the show back into its full, format with the music and with the news and the little tidbits of information. I really miss that because that's what the identity was. As everybody knows, I'm just on this move to really kind of consolidate, streamline things so I can also put focus on getting the VC funding for my business. And I've been going at it. Meeting great people, wonderful people, and making those connections, networking online. Also trying to get to events, and I'm applying, trying to sort everything out. I can't make it to all of these events. I wish I could. I wish I was in a space where, I'm going to go to Miami. I'm going to go to California. NFT, like an NFT NYC. They're going to be like, yo, Nova, why you are not at NFT NYC? Well, to be honest with you, I can't spread myself thin, especially when it comes to how I'm making these payments for these things. I mean, NFT NYC, I think it was $800 just to become a member, and it's a couple of days you have to be there. And they do have a late joint that you can submit for as far as a ticket, and that's double the price. I'm like $1,500. I'm like, yeah. So I'm really trying to, because I'm not a wealthy person. So wherever I can be, that's reasonable, I will be at. And whatever events, I'm as Kendrick Lamar says, I think Kendrick said it, I'm what he said? I'm an introverted extrovert. I think that's what he said. Probably I don't know. But yeah, I like being around people, but I also cherish my energy to replenish and recharge. So I try to be as many spots as I can, taking into consideration that I have other responsibilities in other places. So I really have to be strategic. And there's an event that's happening that's dealing with fintech over in California. And I want to go there, but I want to be, it's like a chess game. You have to place your pieces where you can. And if I can do something and network just as much as I can here in NYC, and plus this is like the financial capital of the world. And they're talking about billions of dollars are being put in VCs into founders. And I'm like, yeah, let me get it. It's like the ocean as far as VC money. Okay, how could I jump into that river, to catch some of that money? So, if I can make it here in NYC, I can make it in any place. So I'm really trying to be strategic in where I move, where I put my money, and making sure I can maximize wherever I'm at. That's going to be beneficial for the brand. So yeah, I got a lot of things to say. I guess I think we could get into the show. Like I said, hopefully, as I always say, your week has been educational and fun and damaging in a lot of ways, because of course the downsides build up your character and who you're going to be in the years to come. So yeah, we need those downs, we need those downsides, we need those trips, we need those falls, we need to get into those bad moments, because it also shapes who we are, and in terms of on a personal level and also on a professional level, what we allow, what we don't allow. and how we change our behavior, how we act towards people, how we're going to handle our business as CEOs and founders and all that sort. So it's important that we experience that. Not everything is going to be on the upside. Not everything is going to be great. There will be missteps, but we have to learn from them. You know what I mean? So hopefully everything was beautiful for you guys and bad at the same time. So, all right, my name is Nova Phoenix on GCOM Radio, on iHeartRadio, and we're going to just get this thing going on a couple of topics that I wanted to explain to you guys. I said it right this time. I didn't say it last time. You know, it's like my little call thing. Hopefully, I don't know. It was something that I like doing. Anyway, let's get things rocking and rolling. So what has been happening here? Another thing I got to do, I got to tweak. I know you guys have been listening to the show, and it seems like I'm overmodulating in some parts. I have to spend my time trying to properly EQ my vocals, and it can peak sometimes. So I do a lot of learning. YouTube is a great place for you to pick up some tips on how to do things, and I did pick up some tips as far as EQing my vocals. But this particular video that I saw, because I have a naturally bassy, a loud voice, so I got to tweak it because I've been noticing that it's been overmodulating. I will do it, but time. I'm in so many different places. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know which direction to go in because there's so many things that's happening on a personal and professional level. Anyway, let's get this thing started. So I did my 23andMe, and I shared it on Twitter, and because something that it had a profound impact on who I was, how I see myself, how I shape my own identity as a black man in this country, understanding the history of people of African descent when it comes to the transatlantic slave trade, our history in America, history in the Caribbean, history on the continent. So I even though I know, of course, I come from the continent, I took 23andMe, and it was totally by fluke because I was doing Forward. I'm part of that. I'm signed up for the Forward medical experience. So GoForward.com. Anybody who wants to really dive deep on a genetic level and who they are, and really kind of experience a whole new way where we can how we handle our health with our healthcare provider. And I was signed up for Go Forward. I really liked them. I did it, and it was beautiful, as I showed on my IG. And one part of it is doing genetic testing, and 23andMe offered a kit, and I did it. And it definitely gave me, I did the whole, saliva thing, sent it in weeks, and, I got my results, and I showed it on IG. Actually, I didn't show it on IG. I shared it on Twitter. So, everybody knows, of course, African Americans that come from on this side of the hemisphere, that the majority of our roots, our genetic lineage, comes from the continent because of the transatlantic slave trade. So, just to read off what I got here, if people haven't seen it on Twitter or wherever. So did the test, and it says I am 82.9 sub-Saharan African. Wonderful, right? Wonderful, of course. So it says out of that is West African. I'm 71.2% within sub-Saharan Africa. Out of being in that West African region, I'm 44.2% Nigerian, wild. 22.4% Ghanaian, Liberian, and Sierra Leonean. 1.8 from Senegambian and Guinean, Fula and Wolof people. Broadly West African, 2.8 overall. Congolese and Southern East African, 11.5. Angolan and Congolese, 11.5. Broadly Sub-Saharan African, 0.2%. European, I'm 11.4% European, of course. For obvious reasons, the slave master is in my blood. So, but Northwestern European, 7.4, British and Irish, 6.6, crazy. Broadly Northwestern European, 0.8. Southern Europe, I'm 2.8. Spanish and Portuguese is 2.7. Broadly Southern European, 0.1%. Ashkenazi Jewish, 0.6%. What? I'm just noticing that, looking at this. Genetics is funny when you read this stuff. When you break it down right to it's amazing, man. Broadly European, 0.6%. Central and South Asian, 2.5%. Out of that, Central Asian, Northern Indian, and Pakistani, 2%. Northern Indian and Pakistani, 1.7%. Broadly Central Asian, Northern Indian, and Pakistani, 0.3%. Southern South Asian, 0.5%. Southern and Indian and Sri Lankan, 0.5%. And you'd be like, yo, how does that work into? I just recently found out, talking to my pops, that my grandfather is Trini. Who'd have thunk it? I'm like, yo, if people don't understand Trini's people is a mixture of African people and also the migration of East Indians that came into the country. That's why you have a lot of, this term is insulting to Trinidadian people. We only say it up coolie. When we say coolie, it means kind of the wavy, straight-haired Trini. So that's come from Trinidad. So you got, of course, 4C curly kinky hair people from Trinidad, and then also because it's the mixture of the East Indians, some came out with curly silky hair, some have straight curly hair with a little bit of wave. That's what we call coolie. So of course, if you even listen, you go to any Trinidadians community, or you go to, say, Trinis are famous for their rotis. Roti. I gotta emphasize the T. You can't say roti like Americanize it. You say roti. Right? So I'm bad at it. I have to be around to really get, you know what I mean? Anyway, so a lot of them, if you listen to Trinidadians, you can hear similarities with East Indian dialect and Trini dialect. So, understanding the fusion of these two peoples in Trinidad. So yeah, so that's why I have some Indian in my genes. So and all these, I'm really about to get to these names. So Central and South Asian did that. Eastern Asian, Indigenous American, 1.6, of course. There's intermixture of people, of the indigenous people of this region, of course, in the Caribbean. That's going to be mixed up in my blood. Western Asian and Northern African, 1.2. So that's 0.6. Northwestern, Northwest Asian, Iranian, Caucasian, and Mesopotamian, 0.6. North African, 0.5. Broadly Western Asian, 0.1. So that's wild. That's the thing. And it gets even deeper. They even tell you where you, like, your immediate lineage. So, of course, my folks are from Panama, but it also said I'm from Jamaica. Of course, I'm from Jamaica, and they're saying you're from Saint Elizabeth Parish, Jamaica. Of course, Jamaican, because we understand a lot of the Black African Caribbean folks went to the Panama for jobs in the building of the Panama Canal, and some went back, and the majority of them just stayed, and that's why there's an intermixture of all these different people in the Caribbean, especially where Panamanians come from, the Black Panamanians. A lot of them are just Black people from the Caribbean. That's why you have kind of a fusion of the West Indian culture within Panama being a Latino culture. Black people in Panama speaking Spanish, but a lot of we have a heavy influence in the Caribbean, and because I'm not going to try to kind of, not like Panama is like way off in, like Polynesia or the American Samoa. Panama is in the Caribbean region. It's funny, I went to the West Indian Day Parade many years ago, and a person, I had my flag, my Panama flag poking out of my pocket, and an older group of ladies, and one lady out of this older group, because I was going up and see my boy because he lived in the area. And she's like, "Oh, where you from?" I said, "Oh, I'm from Panama." She's like, "Oh, you're not really from here." I'm like, "Huh?" She said, "You're not really Caribbean. You're Central American." I'm like, "Yeah, Central American. We really." We really gonna go there? That's where we gonna go. We gonna try to specify and kind of dissect people where they from. So is this in a way to try to delegitimize my presence there at the West Indian Day Parade? I'm like, wow. So she didn't really explain it in detail. We was just kind of like in passing. She was going with her these middle-aged ladies at the time. They were going to see their friends. They were probably even middle-aged, probably in their 60s. And I went to go see my boy. So that's interesting that she was trying to just dissect it in that way. I just consider it, we're all in the Caribbean area. Wherever black people are in the Caribbean, we're all heavily influenced by West Indian culture. So regardless if you speak Spanish from Panama or, because there are black people also in Colombia and Venezuela. And I recently met, this is crazy, I recently met a woman that's from, oh my God, she's from Honduras. And because I was listening to her speak, I'm like, yo, she got a Spanish accent, but she was straight black. There's no denying she was straight black. And I was like, yo, she's from the Garifuna people in Honduras. There's a population of black people of African descent in Honduras that, of course, they stayed together. And a lot of the African tradition or culture stayed within that group and was passed down from one descendant to the next, from one generation to the next. And they're specifically called the Garifuna people. That's crazy. And I looked it up, and actually the Garifunas are spread out. They're predominantly, I think, let me see here. I think they're predominantly in here. They're saying they have Garifuna people, supposedly loosely, say here, St. Vincent, 1,100 to 2,000 Garifuna people in there. You have Nicaragua, you have about 2,000 people there. In Belize is about 15,000 Garifuna. But the highest population of Garifuna people are from Honduras, about 200,000 to start with. And I think, actually, they said, I'm reading this, it looks like 600,000 Garifuna people live right now in Honduras. That is wild. That is crazy. So, it's just like the shared experience from whatever island you come from. You are African people mixed up, some with East Indians, some with the indigenous people there. And, you of course, everyone stood together. Of course, with the slavery passed, people stay. And out of this, whole new cultures develop. And that's why you have the languages of Trini and Guyanese people. And if you're from St. Lucia or St. Vincent or Jamaica, all these different places where you have these languages develop and different foods. And we all relate to each other in one way or in one way or another. But essentially, we're people of African descent that created these splintered off different cultures based on the regions that we were born in and we stayed in. And that's the English language, or just language in general. It's a living animal, man. Languages always develop different ways based on the place where you're at or the people that you're next to, and whole other cultures develop from that. And not just from the language, but for where the people reside. So that's interesting. So anyway, I don't want to get off the topic too much, but it brought me to this feeling of questioning my identity. Questioning in a sense of really meditating and thinking about and reflecting on who I am, like who I am really. Who am I? Of course, I understand I'm African wholly, of course, based on what the numbers I just gave you. But I have my family that speaks Spanish as Panamanian, and I'll never neglect that or shut that out. Most of my family is there. But I'm also rooted, if you go far back enough, to Jamaica. And then recently finding out that, I also have roots in Trinidad. But yet I'm born in the United States. And I'm culturally African American, mostly. All right, I don't speak Spanish. My mother and father never taught me, but I'm born here, born and raised. And my life is of the African American culture. And that's the music, that's the food, that's hip hop. I mean, when I got introduced to it at an early age, my identity is based on African American culture. Of course, hip hop, to be more specific, and what developed from there, from break dancing, from the food, from the swag, from the music, the 5 elements, pretty much, of how KRS broke down. And my majority of my identity is based within that. But I understand I come from a broader understanding of identity from what I just said. So who am I? if I'm not any one of these things, I'm all of these things. So who am I? And it makes me think. And when I say who am I, I'm also saying who am I in terms of not just myself as an individual, but us African American people from the Caribbean, us all together. Who are we if we're not one thing in all of these things, where we're from all these other places and no place at all? Who are we when we really think about it? Are we ultimately the countries we come from? I mean, it's a question we have to ask each other. Are we the places we come from? I mean, look, humans travel. We understand this. From the very beginning, hundreds of thousands of years ago, where human beings were born out of Africa, we spread out, we migrated. We went to the region before it was called India, the region before it was called Europe. We went over, from what I understand, went over the Bering Strait. The people came down, of course, into North America, the land before it was called America, down into the place before it was called, South America. And people populated the planet by migrating. And we're spanning this for tens of thousands of years. And eventually cultures developed out from that. Languages came from that. Tradition, right? Ritual. And then that's how you have different people, even if we weren't in the know of each other at the time. Let's say 1,000 years ago. We knew of each other in our neighboring regions. Like, of course, Europeans knew who Africans were. Africans, I'm sure, knew who Chinese were, and the Africans knew who India, of course. And we have to, and I say this because there's certain books that I've read that you have to come to the understanding that people did travel. Not Europeans all of a sudden created the boat and they went all over the world and then they introduced everybody to each other from the fucked up shit that they did. No, people traveled. They went on boats. People are smart enough to understand astronomy, how they use the stars to guide them. And yeah, they didn't have engines or anything on their boats, but how did they move? Wind power. And also ocean current power. So people travel. Like Mansa Musa, they say that possibly he could travel to the new world, quote unquote, so people understand what I'm talking about, for lack of a better argument. A better phrase, excuse me. People travel. African people travel. The Chinese travel. As I said this before, everyone traveled. Not everyone, but a good portion of it. It was like Grand Central Station in a lot of different places of the world. People met each other. It took a longer time to do it, but people met each other. And some people stayed, because if you understand travel like how it was back in the day, it didn't take a couple of hours like how we jump on planes or on cars or boats or anything like that. But, people did use wind power or ocean current power, and it took months. You think those people, it took months to get to one other place that was to them miles, galactically separate, like how our galaxies are separated, of what we understand today in the universe? It was kind of like the same thing from Africa to, quote unquote, the new world, that landmass. So they didn't travel back once they got there. Once they hit land, they chilled out and searched around, found other people. Oh, snap. I didn't know there was other people here. What's going on? They talked, they traded, whatever. Hey, listen, I'm going back. I've been here a year, but I really got to go back home. And they hopped back on a boat back to Africa. And it took another 6 months or whatever, however long it took. And the same way, of course, they were shorter distance going to India or Chinese. They eventually met Chinese. There's a lot of things that we don't even understand, because the history that we've been taught by Western society is that people didn't talk to each other. People never met. All we understand is from a European point of view, that only time this invention was created, this communication was created, the transportation created was by, Christopher Columbus and all the others, like the Portuguese and the French and the Dutch and all these places. No, people been talking. We do not have an honest understanding of how history came to be, or what happened in recent history. And I'm talking about the last, 5,000 years. We don't understand that. It's through the lens of this Western society. It is very constricted, very narrow-minded. But when you read and you find out, you're like, oh, snap. You start asking yourself questions after you read one book to the next. I'm like, yo, if this happened, wow, it's totally different. And the things that you don't see in your school books and you find out by other books in libraries about, say, the technological advancements of the Chinese and how their boats were way bigger than Europeans. And I'm like, yo, wait a second. There are whole different economies and cultures and societies that came of age at the time that surpassed European societies. And we're older than them. So, and I said humans travel. So if we traveled back then and we're traveling now, we have people that identify themselves as Italian and Irish and African and Indian and Chinese and Japanese and all these names that we understand it today. These names are recently new. We don't know and I also have to input, these names are just names that we recognize today when it comes to a specific people. And these land masses, these names that came about today were based on, Europeans going to these other lands and then calling it. Now, there are some of these, the names of these countries have root words that are specific to their culture. We don't know. We have to go deeper than that. We have to kind of read books from linguists and say, okay, the people that did the work, the academic work, and say, oh, yeah, all right, cool. Yeah, this is rooted in Mandarin language. That's why we get, you know what I'm saying? So we have to be able to understand that. So these people and these land masses had different names 2,000 years ago. You know what I mean? And for perfect example, Egypt is not, that's a Greek word. The true word is Kemet. When you read the hieroglyphics and you understand what these people call themselves, it's not what we know of it today from our books, from our educational books. There are different names. If you go by their culture, by their script, you understand they identify themselves by other names. But again, for lack of, just for the sake of this conversation, we'll call it what we know it, what we're familiar with. So who are we? Who are we today? If people travel, transportation is becoming faster. It's becoming cheaper. Well, more or less, it's expensive to go to certain places in Africa, like even Barbados, I heard is like the price kind of like quadrupled. It's crazy. And then, based on the market with gas and everything like that. But in terms of how we used to travel and what it is today, it is becoming cheaper, it is becoming faster. And as technology improves, it will get cheaper. So, to fly over to UK from New York, it'll take about 2 hours with this new technologies that they're experimenting with. It'll eventually become cheaper, as everything. Like TVs, when they first came on the scene, they were super expensive. Only people that were of certain class could buy TVs. I'm talking about when they were first introduced back in the 1950s, I think, when they were invented. But now everyone has a TV, not even just matter of fact, not just one TV. People got 4 or 5 in the house. So the technology has gotten better. It has made the products cheaper. People have them. So as transportation becomes faster and cheaper, people are going to travel a whole lot more. And there were people in other places, even at the time, 100 years ago, 200, 300, 400 years ago, there were people that stayed in other places, like African people were in Europe. Indian people were in China. Chinese people were, they stayed for a certain amount. Some stayed, some didn't. For under whatever reasons, whether it was by force or by choice. So who are we as a people if we're not any one of these things and people travel all over the place? The world is big, but at the same time, it's getting so much smaller. Who are we as a people? That's why I always had problems with the FBA idols thing. I never really understood it, because to me, it never really breaks down the answers, the fundamental questions on who African people are as a whole. It takes a piece, you get it, but it's flawed based on the person that shaped this identity, this FBA identity. Idols, I don't really care about that. That's more of, to me, there was an agenda by the greatest society larger politically to try to capture people into the Republican Party. And I knew that from the very beginning. Talib Kweli did a great analysis on it on his social media. And they've been called out. They're irrelevant. People don't care. People see it. But FBA, Foundational Black Americans, I always found it is a flawed terminology, because it doesn't make sense. And I think it's shaped and influenced by the cultural pressures of Western society without any real study or discipline. I think, and everybody knows who he is, Tariq Nasheed. He coined this phrase, foundational Black Americans. And there are a lot of different motivations why he coined this phrase, because he wanted to separate people that were generationally, who are Black generationally here, who are generationally Black Americans, rooted in the slave trade. And they wanted to be able to separate themselves from the other Africans, say in the Caribbean, and from the continent. So no, we're not that. And I think, to me personally, a big part of the identity of FBA is based on a monetary value, because of course a big talk is reparations, and you want to make sure that reparations are not given to people that are Sierra Leonean or Nigerian or Ghanaian, whoever that transplants themselves over here and call them they're technically African American. So this term was brought up, FBA, to separate themselves, say, no, we are Black people that came from this land, from the transatlantic slave trade, and I can root myself back to the origin, say to the first slave master. We should get reparations, not anybody else. And I kind of understand that to a certain degree. But again, if you base identity just on for monetary reasons, you miss the point entirely, what it is to identify yourself and how you identify yourself. What are those things, those concepts that make you who you are? That goes a little bit, that goes down 10 levels deeper down inside you, so you can properly call yourself who you want to be, not just based because, I'm gonna make sure you don't get no money, so I'm gonna call myself FBA. And it's that very understanding is what makes it flawed, in my personal opinion. Because foundational, who and how does this word come into play? So you're saying, well, we not really from African. And again, this is what he bases this on. Well, most of the African people didn't come in the United States. Most of it was like 5%, whatever. Most of them ended up in the Caribbean. So we're not really African. If we not there, if most of the Africans went to the Caribbean and say about 5% came here, then how we come to be is because we're really Indian and indigenous, and we're a part of this tribe. We're the really indigenous people. We're foundational to this land. We're the original people. Okay. And then Black, are you defining yourself by color? I'm not defining myself by color. That's one part of me, a description to give me an insight onto myself. Okay, Black. Okay, I'm according to, other people, but I'm not going to wholly define myself by a color. And of course, American. We adopted this name because we were slaves on boats that came over here, and you took on the names of your slave master, and just by default, you are American. And there are some things that, of course, that culturally make us American based on there are foods or how we see things, the movies we watch. Tradition that makes you uniquely American. But then you go one level down, of course, you're African American through hip hop and through R&B and all these other things that make you a distinct group or separate from all the other people that call themselves American. I get it. So you call yourself American. So to me, but then a lot of this is the other thing. And this is a little insight for other non-Black people that are listening to this podcast. Black people in America understand we're culturally American, but we don't hold on to that word as much as white America. And here's a prime example. When you drive through any part in New York City, and I can let me just say for New York City for one, you can tell a difference between, without even seeing people, you could tell the difference between a white community and a Black community. How do you do that? By the American flag. White people in a white community fly American flags, and they post it in front of every house. And when you see more than 3 houses with American flags, you know you're in a white community. Now go to a Black community. They don't fly American flags. They don't fly American flags because Black people feel that we're not treated as whole Americans. And if we're not treated as whole Americans, we do not jump we don't jump 110% into the identity of Americanism. Kind of a rebellious action. We understand we're American, we get it. But because of the issues that African Americans deal with in this country, we do not fully embrace this idea of Americanism as much as white people do, because this society works for white Americans in ways that it doesn't work for African Americans. That's why white folks fully embrace this Americanism. In the clothes and the flags and all these things, it works for them. They're good. They have their house, they have their family, they have a great job, they're making a lot of money. They fully embrace it, as opposed to African Americans, where we're dealing with all of these isms. So we just move about. Yeah, we're culturally American, but we don't fully fall for that. And that's just not every black person, but most black people. And I dare you to go out there, and I just want you to drive around and look at a white community, and then you drive to a black community. It's a difference. So in terms of me, I feel like, okay, who am I? And it puts things in perspective of what my identity will be in the future. And I think that's just the plight of African American people in this country, trying to find an identity. And we're not the same. Yeah, we're human beings, but there are things that we do culturally that are different. And that's what makes us who we are. And I think a big part of this eventual identity that's developing, that's pushing off into another direction, is our music, hip hop. And it's just not hip hop, it's R&B. It's also reggae music. It's house music. It's all these things that black people created that we have given out to the world, that it's a piece of us forming that identity. Understanding that. And we're taking all these things through, Southern black food to the West Indian food and all these things. And it comes in the way we are, our movements, our dance, our swag, all of these things that gives us our identity as African Americans comes through music. And then it turns into clothes and our words that we say. And of course, our experience in life that pushes us off into another direction. And that's, to me, that is the plight of African American people, finding identity, having self-determination. But I think it's going to go beyond that. I feel that African American experience will be rethought. I think not just for African American people, I think for all human beings. Because if you're traveling more frequently than we ever have, it's becoming cheaper. People in Africa are moving to England. People in England are moving to America. People from South America are ending up in China. Asian people are ending up in the UK and some in India, some in Africa. Big Asian population is in the Caribbean and South America. So my thing is, not just in terms of African American identity, but also human identity. I think human identity is going to change because we base our identity from the regions, from the landmass that we're from. If you're from continental Africa, you're African. If you're from the region of China, you're Chinese. If you're from Japan, you're Japanese, such and so forth. Wherever your people have been for long periods of time, thousands of years. But I think as transportation becomes cheaper and faster, I think the identity will start to change. Because, as I said, we base our identity from where our people came from this particular landmass. But if people are moving all over the place, just as I said in my identity before, I actually, and here's another good example. I met someone that's from, I think, Colombia. I think I said this on the show. I think not Colombian. I forgot, a South American country. But I knew based on his name that he wasn't South American. He wasn't. I'm like saying, we had an honest conversation. He's like, no. Actually, my father is from Jordan, I think, a Middle Eastern country. Ended up moving to South America. I think Canada first, but moved to South America. He met his mother, right? Of course, he picked up Spanish from there. And then after that, when he came to a certain age, he moved to the United States. And now he's living his life as a person, a U.S. citizen in the United States. So who is he really? Is he Jordanian or from the Middle East? Is he from the country that he was born in South America? Or is he this new culture that he adopted as recent American? Is he one thing or all of these things? Is he from one place or from all of these places? So when you start to understand that human beings travel, the idea of identity starts to change based on the old definition of what we understood identity to be. So I think what's going to happen as far as in terms of African American people and human beings in general, I think the idea of identity is not going to be based on the landmass where you're from, but by your ideology. That blows out borders from wherever countries you're from. That borders are going to become increasingly irrelevant. And your identity is going to be based on ideas, concepts, your worldview. And that identity is going to be connected to other people, whether they're from the UK, whether they're from South America, Africa, the American Samoa, Hawaii, India. I think identities are going to develop from those worldviews that people connect with around the planet. And is that going to sprout into the way you move, your way your clothes, your food? I think it's going to be an amalgamation of all different things. So the idea of identity is going to change. And in terms of African Americans, I feel that that's where we're headed. And there's going to be a new identity is going to sprout from that, whether you're from America generationally, whether you're from the Caribbean, West Indian, or whether you're from continental Africa. Because I see all the influences that are happening when I watch social media and I see black people talk. I saw one black person speak and they were talking about something, whatever they were talking about, but I was noticing her language, noticing her dialect that she was talking. I'm like, this is from continental Africa. But then I heard an American accent. Oh, she's adopting an American. I'm black American accent. And then I heard a twinge of UK. So I'm like, wait a second. That's an English accent. Wait a second. So where is she from? She took on 3 different dialects in one conversation, one short 60-second or 120-second conversation she was having on her profile. And I heard 3 different dialects: continental African, American black accent, and the UK. So who is she? Because we do these things based on where we are born and also major influences. So where is she? Is this the new thing now? Where does she quote unquote, plant her roots? And how does that shape her identity today? So these are interesting things that I came upon. So hopefully there was an insight into that. So anyway, the other next thing that I was going to talk about is rents are rising, rents are rising. I saw this IG post of rents in major cities, and it's, this guy was talking about, and he posted it even when he was talking, it's New York City, Miami, Florida, Seattle, all the major cities, and it was showing the highest rents in these areas. And he was basically saying this is unsustainable. And we've been known that this is unsustainable. We need a new way to do things. I mean, New York rent was like $4,000. I'm like, wait, New York, a big part of New York is the blue collar community. All right. The middle class can't afford $4,000 a month. It's unsustainable. The rents are getting out of control. And of course, the Fed raised their interest rates because the market was too hot. Money has flooded the market. So they had to cool this by raising interest rates, which kind of like keeps people from buying, say in terms of the housing market. If the interest rates are up, the banks got to raise their interest rates. People are going to start saying, whoa, wait a second. People are going to say, I don't want that. The seller is going to be like, well, nobody's buying. My house has been on the market. I need to drop the price. In ways to control how the economy flows from 1 month, from 1 year to the next, from 1 month to the next, such and so forth. They had to raise interest. I think interest rates are 8.6 now. It's crazy. It's out of control. And look what's happening. To me, it's just pure greed, man. these rents that are going up, these mortgage rates is going up. I mean, all food is going up. Everything is going up except people's pay. So I think we need to create a new system that's going to be sustainable for people in all classes, because it can't continue here. It can't continue on in New York City, because how I see it is these rents keep going up. Who's going to be able to live here? So they have these housing lotteries for people that can make it anywhere between $25,000 and $35,000. They can't afford the new rents that are happening today in New York. And I basically saw, I see what's happening. So you're going to have the ultra rich living in New York, but then you got to have who's going to serve them the food? Who's going to clean their beds? Who's going to make sure that their groceries are delivered to their house? Who's going to clean their houses? Oh, that's what these housing lotteries are. Because you need the waiters and all this what do you call it? Waiting on people hand and foot to the upper class. You need the serving class. Not rich people ain't going to be doing it. So, okay. So you're going to have the ultra rich and you're going to have the ultra poor. Those are the only people who are going to be able to stay here based on these lotteries. Rich people ain't going to do it themselves. They ain't washing these dishes themselves. So you need the serving class here. So I see that's what's happening. Oh, that's what's happening. So there's no room for people in the middle class to actually have a healthy life in this city. And it's just not happening in New York City. It's happening in all the major cities. It's unsustainable because it's greed. And people are literally running around from borough to borough trying to find affordable rent. They're literally running from borough to borough. I know people that in Park Slope, Brooklyn, they moved into Brooklyn. They were called the gentrifiers back then, 20 years ago. How Park Slope was changing, going into Fort Greene. And those very people 8 years ago started to move back into Manhattan because Brooklyn got too expensive. I'm like, yo, look at that. People moved into Brooklyn to escape Manhattan sky high prices. And now those very same people that live in Brooklyn moving back to Manhattan. That's nuts. Yo, it's too expensive in Brooklyn. Let's get out of here. Yeah, that's where we're saying that it's a problem, man. And it's a running away from itself. We live in a hyper-capitalist state right now. And it is running away from itself, and people cannot take it they cannot. It is a problem. It is unsustainable. So we have to start rethinking how we are going to house people, how we just, as human beings, how we're going to interact, how we're going to live. This economy needs to be restructured. That's a part why I'm into Web3. And it's partly why I'm I guess I'm just thinking a bit out loud. I have to get my thoughts together on that. Why the whole creation of Bitcoin. And we don't know who made it. It just popped up on the scene, 12, 13, 15 years ago. So it makes me think, I'm like, did someone know that this was going to be an eventuality? Like, the economy that we live in was going to eat itself alive, and there has to be something else that's going to replace it. Interesting. A lot of people in government are against it. A lot of people in government are for it. So did they know that this was going to be a very hot topic, and it was going to be something that's going to divide people in government? It's not something that all peoples in government, all levels of government is all going to be for. No, they knew that something was coming. I'm just saying, I'm just going off on the story here, on a tangent here. Did they know something was coming? An economist and say, hey, we got to inject something because in about 15, 20 years, our economy is going to implode. So we got to put something out. It's just a random thought I'm having as far as the creation of Bitcoin when it first started. So, we don't know who did it. So it's interesting to me. Anyway, so rents are getting really crazy, man. And we have to start, if politicians can't figure it out, people are going to have to figure out some different ways of we're going to do this. Because if we continue on this trend, people gonna be living on the streets, and basically people are living in the streets. What's happened in California? Not that people is anything wrong with them mentally. They're homeless. There's some hardworking blue collar people in California, specifically LA, that's living in their cars, and you have whole blocks with cars, rows and rows of cars and trucks and RVs, and people are living out of. I know one guy here. I think he's living out of his RV. It's an old RV. And he's got everything. He's got his bike. He's got his, the guy's religious because he's got like a poster that has a religious statement on the side of it. He's always in the parking lot. I'm like, yo, this dude lives out of his car. And he's happy. He cool. He's got the generator in the back. So whenever he needs power, you just, run that generator. So we got to think of something different, man. So it's crazy. Jurassic World. Let's go on to the next thing. Jurassic World. It was good. Little review there. A lot of people didn't like it, but I thought it was cool. I mean, look, it was a movie about dinosaurs chasing humans and eating humans. How much different can you do this movie? So, but I thought it was cool. I took it, with the family with me. My wife didn't like it too much. She liked the last one. But again, you got to put things in perspective here. Every Jurassic movie from the very beginning was about these friggin' lizards eating people, these oversized lizards eating people. Humans don't understand, the ramifications of what they're doing by creating dinosaurs or recreating dinosaurs. They get out, they destroy the habitat or the building that they were created in. Humans get eaten, blah, blah, blah. That's the same premise for every Jurassic World movie. So at this point, it's like, hey, all right, cool. How can someone get eaten differently? And let's see a different species of dinosaur. Wow, I never seen that in the last Jurassic World. Hey, that's pretty cool. That's pretty much what sums up Jurassic Park. I mean, just take it for what it is. People gonna critique the script and the actors and how it was directed and the CGI. I thought the CGI was a little shaky for me. For every other Jurassic Park that I've ever seen, it was really top-notch CGI work. But for this one, when they first started it and you started seeing the dinosaurs when they went to the facility, I thought the dinosaur, I'm like, yo, was it me or these dinosaurs kind of like the detail is not as dope as the last ones? And of course, as you go on with the movie, you see other dinosaurs. Maybe they didn't have time to do that scene, and they say, "Yo, just rush it." Because what I'm finding out now is they are to the 11th hour. The CGI crew, the CGI studio that's handling the special effects, it goes to the 11th and a half hour, and they'll put out a trailer, and it's not all the way done. They're still working on it, and I think maybe they were like, "Yo, man, we ain't gonna have time to really fine tune this joint." And yeah, I thought the dinosaurs at the beginning was a little crazy. The motorcycle dino scene was dope. Pure excitement. Loved it. It was a lot of really good hair raising moments. Was the script weak? Like I said, it is what it is. You're not reinventing the wheel with Jurassic Park. You know what you're gonna get. So overall, from 1 to 10, I give it a 7. I'll give it a 7. All right, it is what it is. You're not gonna see anything different that you haven't already seen. Oh yeah, by the way, the boys. I just found out that season 4 is on. They signed on the dotted line that the season 4 is going to be on and popping. Oh my God. Oh, based on last, you know how I felt about friggin' Boys. I think it is the greatest show on Amazon Prime, hands down. The greatest show. Nothing's beating. Homelander, the dude that plays Homelander, my man, I think he's a better villain than Thanos. That's how real I think Homelander is. And I know it feels like it's coming to an end. And I know based on the comic, he gets offed by himself, Homelander. I hope, you gotta stretch this one out, man. You got, the only way Homelander's got to get checked. He doesn't have a weakness, but he's got to get checked. You want these seasons to continue, and you want to have that same, that battle between Homelander and Butcher and then the boys. Yeah, he needs to get checked and realize that he's killable. You know what I mean? So it kind of pulls him back from his maniacal ways. So yeah, that's the only way, because the way they're scripting and out, this guy is becoming more stable by the moment, every episode. But I'm happy to see that season 4 is on the popping, man. That's fantastic. Let's move on. This is a wild thing. I was looking at this IG thing, and this is in passing. I was looking at this IG thing, and this guy was actually saying that he doesn't understand why, but women. I think it's actually Twitter. I'm not why the society is turning into a woman-man thing in terms of work. Like, he said, where did this trend start to happen? Women should stay at home. That's better to raising children. I mean, and this guy from his profile picture looks like he was hiking, on a mountain or whatever the case may be, a black guy, whatever. So I need to understand why he was saying this. And I'm like, the guy is talking like people made the choice for both parents to work. As I was just talking about with rent in New York City on this other IG post or whatever, on Twitter post, that rent is out of control. All right. It's the same reason. It's directly connected to why both parents are working. You think people want to work? You think understanding these latchkey kids and we're losing touch with our kids and TV is raising them and their friends and they're trying to figure out life amongst their friends and they're just as immature as your own kid. You think people want to work? Nah, man. I thought it was such an asinine statement. I really got pulled into it because I'm like, I don't even know why people say certain things. And that's why I wonder if a lot of these tweets or posts on IG are just to get people talking. You know what I mean? For it to go viral so you can add value to the platform. Because this is what he said. He's like, oh, why are women working? Women should. It's not that easy, man. It's not easy, especially when you're coming from New York. You got rent to pay. You got cars. Everything is going up. People have to work. Back in the day, you probably could have got away with it with a one income household. How they had the man was just working and it was a stay-at-home mom and everything like that. But now there is no choice that people have to have two income households. And sometimes that's even not enough because people are talking about second jobs and all this other thing, trying to find alternate ways to make some money. It's crazy, man. So I thought that was very short-sighted. I thought that was very narrow-minded. What you guys think about that? What would you rather? And is this a guy like totally clueless in terms of how families should run their finance in their home? Listen, and it doesn't have to be a woman. It could be a man to stay home. But, I tell you, my wife is saying, yo, if you're making $250,000, I'm not working. Yeah, it's your choice. But I'm not making $250,000. So that thing was crazy. I don't know what you guys think about that. How would you want it based on what you make? I'm talking to a lot of blue collar people out there. I'm sure everybody comes from a blue collar background. For the folks that are listening to the show, if you're a millionaire, please throw in your 2 cents. Let me know how you feel about it. You're not excluded from the conversation. Anyway, let's go on and continue on. Belgium extended their deepest regrets, quote unquote, by Belgium's King Philip about the colonization of Congo. But the thing is, what makes it interesting, because I'm reading this article, I forgot where I was reading from. We get a whole lot of regrets, but ain't no money coming with the regrets. Fuck apologies. They were saying, actually one of the Senator Francine Muyumba Nkanga, he says, we expect an apology and a promise of reparations from him. That is the price to definitely turn the page. I'm like, fucking apology. Let's skip over the apology. Let's get to the money. Fuck that. I don't give a damn about your apology, because my thing is, if you're really sorry about what you did, you would have already been putting things into action to make a peace with the nation that you ravaged couple of generations ago. So I don't even give a damn about even the apology. I mean, you said deepest regrets, and the article was saying they were trying to point out that, see, it was deepest regrets, but he didn't say apology. I don't give a fuck. Yo, pay me money, man. You did my country dirty. Excuse me, my people dirty, and for a long time. During that period of colonization, and not just during the period of colonization, the neglect and you being off hands in the current corruption that's happening in the Congo from many different Western powers, and you say nothing. So even into that sense, you can still have a certain colonizing that's happening that's not quite the same as before, but there's colonizing in terms of finance. And then you stay conveniently silent when the Congo is going through all of these problems. So I don't want your regrets. I don't want your apology. Cut me a check. But what got me really was there were some people that were waving on the visit from Belgium King Philip. And I'm like, what? And they were waving flags and banners. I'm like, they have banners that read a common history. I'm like, what common history? What are you talking about? And it was one Kinshasa resident that said, quote, despite what the Belgians did to us during colonization, we are ready to forgive, unquote. I'm like, hold on a second, buddy. That's man, I don't know where this thought process comes, but I tell you, man, and a lot of times, and I don't hate me, y'all, don't hate me. A lot of times this idea of forgiving comes from religion. You know what I mean? And you have these people that's just too quick to forgive. Nah, I'm not saying I hate you. I'm not saying I despise you. I won't hold on to anger. But what I will tell you is I am not going to forgive one bit. You guys are not in my mind. You're not taking space in my brain. You're not what I'm thinking about right now. And I'm not thinking about feeling that I'm going to forgive. So y'all could keep and push one. I'm not from the Congo, but I'm just saying how and I guess it translates the same way here in America when we talk about reparations. I'm like, all right, you could do a study, for forever. We will talk a subject into a ground, and then, I'm like, I'm at this point, I'm like, in terms of reparations and Black Americans, I'm like, I'm tired of the talk. Y'all are talking to death, man. This shit ain't moving quick enough. We're going to talk about the talk, and we're going to meet about the meeting. That's going to be about the meeting next week. And hopefully by the time that happens, that next meeting in the next quarter going to happen, we could probably prepare for the next meeting 5 years down the line. And then, because, without our meetings, without us talking, we got to set this up right. We got to meet, and get the fuck out. Get the fuck out of here. Y'all talking too much. This don't take a long time. 6 months, a year tops. All right. And how long they been talking about? I think it's HR 40 reparations. God damn. They've been talking about this for a long time. Next thing, March for Our Lives, man. They had a march this past Saturday in Washington, D.C. about the proliferation of guns and all these mass shootings. But there was also a protest in Texas and New York and Georgia. March for Our Lives is an organization that started after the mass shooting in 2018 at the Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, where a gunman killed 17 students and wounded staff as well. And I totally forgot about that. I was like, yeah, that's right. It's crazy that so many mass shootings happen. We just lose track on the horror that's taking place in this country, the absolute horror where innocent lives are taken away. That's how normalized we've made it. That's how normalized we made it. So they formulated this organization, March for Our Lives, back then. And, they had a march as well during that time. And guess what? No politicians came forward to submit legislation to try to change the laws or improve gun laws. Just like it's the same business today. And you know what gets me? Again, it's not the politicians. We understand why the politicians, they're being paid to say nothing and do nothing. But it's not so much as the politicians, is what the people are doing. They continuously vote for the same thing. Now, you're going to have a certain sect of people that are pro-gun, and they have a very warped, crazy viewpoint on, are they going to take our guns? And I'm like, and do what? Because, we need the Second Amendment because in case the government goes crazy. So we got to check it. And they would go and quote, militias, well-regulated militias, in case the government goes. I'm like, listen, if you think about it, what are you going to do? What's your AR-15 going to do against bombs, helicopters, jets, what do you call them, drones now? I mean, the technology is so crazy. What are you going to do with your AR-15? Let me know. I just want to know. And I'm not coming from a person that's anti-gun. I think it's no different from a spear, bows and arrows, through how we've protected ourselves through human history. but we have AR-15s that are taking the lives of our children. And what happened in Uvalde, Texas? Taking the lives of our children. Weapons have become more and more deadly, and it's killing more and more people in a short period of time. It's not like a knife or anything. And I know what I said about knives, but when you have so much children die at the hands of one person, and I think technically, we're not saying take away guns. We're saying, hey, maybe we should put together some laws that it'll be like car insurance. You know what I mean? When you have, I don't know, yearly renewals, mental health checks, insurance coverage. In case something goes bad, the insurance covers the death by this gun that this person used against other people. Now, if not a ban from these weapons, there's something that you could do to institute some protections for our citizenry. And if there's anything crazy that goes on, license get revoked or they're permanently suspended for improper use. I don't believe in arming teachers. There's a state, I think it's in Texas as well, where they have actually armed teachers, and it seems like a bad Star Trek movie. You know that Star Trek episode where it was an alternate universe, and then Captain Kirk and all the crew of Star Trek, the Enterprise, in its alternate universe was in a constant state of war, so everyone was armed. You know what I mean? And of course, you know, their attitudes and the behaviors, everything, to show the difference in the universe, the main universe that we say. Yeah, it was crazy. I don't want teachers to have guns, man. So what if a student gets shot, a student takes a gun of a teacher, or if a teacher has their own problems and uses the gun? And it's so many things that could go wrong when you arm teachers. And plus, you don't want to have that in your learning institutions for your children. 8, 9, 10 years old, and his teacher is strapped. That's not the world I want my child to be raised in. It's crazy. What if there's an accidental discharge of the weapon? You know what I mean? There's so many things that could go wrong. So I don't know. I'm not totally convinced. Matter of fact, not even convinced. I just don't want that to happen. I mean, teachers should not be armed. I'm not for that at all. I think that we should work on, as I said before, the licensing, stricter gun policies when it comes to how to get what. And somehow, and I know there's never going to be one way to do things that's going to cure mass shootings throughout America. But one thing I know we can't do is not do nothing. That's one thing we can't do. We can do something. It's crazy. So I'd like to shout out definitely New York Attorney General Letitia James for showing up there. Shout out to Mayor Adams for being there and talking about it. And it was this huge march over the Brooklyn Bridge, and the presence was definitely felt. So as a pro-gun person, yes, I do believe we should do something. We got to do something. And when you hear the stories again and again, what happened in Uvalde at that school, it crushes your soul. And if it does not crush your soul, you are inhuman. So that's my thing. So Silicon Valley, this is the other thing I was getting at. Last thing on the list, Silicon Valley. This is an interesting thing. So this Silicon Valley, So last thing on the list, there was this tweet again. I'm always on Twitter. And it was this tweet by the Silicon Valley tech product manager. He put out a tweet on the future of NFT utility. And it was a 27 tweet thread. I'm not going to go into every tweet that he made a part of this thread, but there was one tweet that basically summed everything up. And he pointed out some things that there was areas of concern for NFTs. And he was talking about price speculation being volatile, memes, whether they add sustainable value to NFTs, the technology infrastructure in regards to the stable coins falling, like what happened with Terra, the blockchain shutting down, like what happened with Solana 7 times. Apparently, I didn't know it shut down so many times. And the issue of NFTs getting stolen. And he was pretty much concerned with where are we going with the utility of NFTs if all these things are a problem today. And they're really great topics to go over because this is a fairly new space that we're stepping into, and all this money that's being traded right now, Bitcoin, the whole cryptocurrency market has dropped crazily. I think Bitcoin is at $25,000 right now. So remembering where it was before, but I'm a hodl type of person. The markets in terms of stock, they tumble sometimes, they tumble all the time, but people keep their belief in the stock market. So it's not going anywhere. So the same thing I feel about the cryptocurrency and the NFT marketplace. It will take its dips. There's going to be some moments where it's going to really bottom out, but then there are people that are active within that space that also believe in buying the dip, because if you buy this, at some point Bitcoin is going to come back up again. So if you're buying Bitcoin at say 25,000 per coin right now, it's eventually going to go back up, and when it gets to 40,000, it's going to be crazy. And it's up to you if you want to cash out or something like that. So there are people that believe wholeheartedly in Bitcoin is not going anywhere, and they are going to buy at the dip. So, but all these conversations that are happening about the NFT marketplace are legitimate, and there are some things that we have to think about as this space grows. Even though that people are getting nervous and people are getting weary, okay, where are we going with this? Oh my God, this isn't. But you know what? This individual is making good points. And he had one problem as far as the products in Web3. If like, for instance, all these P2E play to earn games, should they have focused on NFTs? Because them focusing on NFTs, they would have to build a hype and generate royalties that's going to keep their business alive. Maybe these P2E games should have focused on the gameplay first instead of centering in NFTs, because they have to do these things in order to make profit. And he's making some good points. And he also said, of course, the market is the way it is because, of course, the stock market, there are some hard assets that the stocks represent. And of course, say, for instance, these hard assets, let's say oranges, for instance, they will take a dip for whatever reason. There's a bad storm in Florida, wherever oranges are being produced. Then, of course, the supply is going to shrink, even though demand stays the same. So that means prices have to go up on these items, but eventually it does balance out. And then, it will normalize the price, the stocks to whatever company that's making orange juice. It will balance out, and then people can, the confidence in the market will be reset again. As opposed to NFT, there's no real backing to NFTs, right? It's more on, as he said, market sentiment. That's why the market is so volatile. And I get that. It goes up and it goes down. I watch it in Coinbase. You see these individual coins. There's no real steady growth. It's more up and it goes down. It goes up 5 points, it drops down 5 points, it goes up 10, it drops 10. There's no positive pattern that's going to build confidence in this NFT space or this crypto space. So I do understand where he's coming from with that. So what is the value of NFTs crypto? All right, because if we're going on the fact that it's only the value of the NFT crypto is based on market sentiment, how do we control that where people will sustain their confidence within this Web3 space how should I say it? I can't find the word, folks. Let me see. How can people have their confidence stabilized within the NFT marketplace and cryptocurrencies if we understand that this is based more on market sentiment and how people feel and the psychology of the masses? So I'm like, yeah, that's a good point. And I think that value, if it's not through physical stocks, it's not through hard assets like gold or silver or cadmium or cobalt or whatever that is. What is going to put value, sustain value within the NFT crypto in the market? What do you think, folks? I think it should be not what, but who. What are you talking about, Nova? If it's not what, then it should be a who. What is going to bring value to the NFT crypto marketplace? I think it's human beings. Human beings should stabilize the value of NFT crypto. What do you mean by that, Nova? As they say in social media, if your social media platform is not generating revenue from ads, of course, when you go on Facebook, there are no ads. Mark Zuckerberg says there are no ads on our platform. And that includes, well, I guess you can include IG. At the time, you're not inundated with ads, pop-ups, and all those things, right? Maybe the ads that you see is from the users themselves, right? But the users pay into IG to run these ads, right? It's not going to be from Coca-Cola, even though Coca-Cola can do it. So they're saying the question is, if these platforms are not making money through ads how they traditionally are in other mediums, then you are the commodity. You are the commodity. If they're not making revenue off the ads, they're making revenue off of you. You are what's going to make money for these platforms, because they market it or they present it to different brands, and they'll say, or to different people, and they get money like that. They say, hey, I got 10 million people, 10 million eyes per month on this particular. Hey, man, I'm selling myself. Or they get it from the people. Listen, why don't you promote your ad? You pay us $100. We'll market it to whatever amount that you're putting in this particular region or one. And then you pay us $200. They're generating revenue like that. So the people themselves are what are the source of revenue for these platforms. So in a way, same concept that we can understand it through Facebook and through IG and Twitter and all these other places is the same way we should put it into Web3. Now, what do I mean by that? Think of it as car insurance. Again, I'm using car insurance again, just like in guns. So think of it as car insurance. In New York, I'm not going to talk about any other state, but think of it in terms of car insurance. So car insurance, what do we have? We have, if you get your of course, no car could be on a road without car insurance. If you get into the accident, your car insurance provider will pay the damages, whatever that it is. And then in turn, what happens? They raise your rate based on the frequency of accidents you're having in your car. But usually how it goes, they say if it's that one person's fault, they will contact their insurance and they will pay for your damage and theirs at the same time. So it's not affecting you. But the problem is with car insurance, what we have adjusted ourselves or adapted to with the changing bullshit of car insurance is that what we have in New York is no fault insurance. So it's not just based on, hey, if that person hits you, then their insurance is going to pay for your damage and theirs, so you don't have to worry about it. But we have this thing called no fault insurance, because if you can't really find who's at fault, then they're pretty much saying no fault, both individuals are going to be hit. So regardless if they can figure out who was the cause of the damage, regardless, both of your insurance is going to be hit. So you're both paying for it. Understand what I'm saying? Even in rear end situations, because I've actually had conversations with people in a rear end. If you get rear ended, of course, obviously the person that rear ended you is going to be responsible. Their insurance company is going to pay for the damages. No. I've had this argument with people, and it's like, no, I'm telling you, if you get rear ended, you should never have to pay. I didn't pay. That happened to me, and I'm hearing all these situations. But I've also heard the other end of the argument where the person got rear ended and their insurance still raised their rate, and they were never responsible for that particular accident. So that's the changing BS of car insurance, where you're not even, like it happened to my wife. She got into an accident. She was making a right turn onto the road. A guy to the left of her was trying to force his way into the situation, into the lane, and it hit her. So they stopped. The guy's arguing. He's intimidating my wife, and it always happens when I'm not there. It's crazy. Intimidating her. Call the police. They said, let's call the police. Call the police, and guess what happened? It was my wife's fault. Of course, we seen it as racism because it was a white dude that hit my wife. So he did the winks to the white cop, and the white cop was like, didn't even hear my wife's statement, didn't get no information, automatically considered it her fault. So the police report was made out that she was at fault. My wife was devastated to the point where she was crying. She was like, I didn't do anything wrong. And I'm there comforting her. And that, of course, that's the problem, racism. That's that's what black people got to deal with in this country. So that's what happened. Okay. So where there's no person at fault, both your insurances are going to hit you. So you know what people do to adapt, as I said before, to adjust. You know what people do? You get into an accident and they'll say, hey, man, listen, I know I hit you, whatever, but I got a mechanic. Let them fix your damage. Let's not involve the insurance companies, because what's going to happen is when your cycle ends, the agent's going to call you and say, hey, you got into an accident, so we're going to have to raise your rate. For both sides. And because people understand that, you know what they say? They be like, yo, we'll take care of the damage. Don't even involve it. Let's just deal with this our own way. Because we do not want our insurance to go up. We do not want for our insurance companies to drop us if in case we got in too many accidents. So the people don't even involve the insurance companies. They deal with it themselves. Okay? So where am I going with this? So people are changing their behavior. People are changing the behavior, how they drive. More often than not, people drive with a little bit more understanding and awareness where they're going. People don't want to get into accidents because they know the bullshit that insurance companies get in. So that's the eventuality of having insurance. Meaning people don't get into accidents. That keeps everything good. The insurance companies are good. The drivers are good. So everything kind of works out. But not based on because people just want to do the right thing. Nobody wants their insurance to go up. So people change their behaviors on the road. They're a little bit more careful. You're going to always have assholes, but people are more careful. That's good for them because they have a low insurance premium. That's good for the insurance company because that's less claims that they have to pay out, which of course they're making steady money. That's good for their shareholders. They're making money. So in some ways it works out for all parties involved. So you see that change in our how we handle, driving day to day and car insurance and all that. So I think the same thing has to be done with NFTs, crypto market. That people now are the commodity. People are going to add value. How are they going to do that? They're going to change the way they do things. Their behavior is going to benefit the NFT crypto space. How so? In terms of social credit. Let people be the commodity that's going to back a sustainable value within this marketplace. Social credit. The health of the community, the health of the society is only going to improve the value of the coin. What things can you add on that's going to improve the value where you can improve your community, your society? And that's tied into your economy. In terms of housing, in terms of healthcare, in terms of the price of food. Once you start building social credit, it adds on to the value to this coin. So it's less volatile. I don't know how you turn. I'm just thinking out loud here. Of course, you're going to have a little bit more nuance. You're going to structurally have to work. If I'm onto something here, even more than I talk about it to myself, how can we make this work out? How do we decrease volatility in the market? And understanding that concept of how humans are tied to the value of the platform, how can we take that same concept and tie it to the value of the crypto NFT marketplace? Human activity, human behavior. Doesn't China have something like that? They have some sort of a social credit thing based on how well you do in the society. It affects, I don't know, I guess your medical insurance, something like that. There's some benefits that come with it. I think something like that. Loose. I got to look that up. So how do we do that? How do we tie that to human activity in ways where it benefits human beings, but also sustains or stabilizes the market within the Web3 space and tied to humans? Can we do that? Is that possible? Well, because right now it is. I always felt it was a wild, wild west. It's a casino. I mean, he did say that. This gentleman did say that. It is a casino. I was concerned with that at the beginning because I want to see where it can go. But the deeper you get into the Web3 space and what it means for people, how the applications can benefit human society, then you start to understand that it could be more than just buy, selling, and trading fucking bored out ape club apes and bored apes and all that dumb shit. Fucking gargoyles or demons or whatever they want to talk about. Doodles, because the people that are exercising themselves within the NFT place are the people that already have money. How do we extend the NFT marketplace where it benefits people, where everyone can take a part in it? That's my take. So I'm interested to see where we can go with this. And as I said before, this Silicon Valley tech product manager, he does make a point. He does make a point. But we're going to evolve. Things will get better. The technology will get better. And we're going to find other ways. And if what I can do to add on to that, I'm all for that. And that's essentially what Lyfeblood is about using it in a practical sense where it benefits all human beings on this planet. And we're on to something. But there are agents, of course, that are going to be on Twitter and all social media. Either they're going to try to sabotage the market, sabotage the Web3 space, or they'll wait for something that truly disrupts the market and then say, see, I told you. See, I told you this doesn't work. As for instance, what happened to Terra Luna and this guy, what's his name? It turns out this guy, Joe Kahn, what's his name? The creator of Terra, I think, Do Kwon. Turns out this guy was taking $80 million a month from the actual coin. How is that possible? And the SEC is all over it right now and then putting the pressure on Do Kwon. I would love to get into that a little bit further, but I don't want to just like get into something, and I want to have my thoughts clear for that before I talk about it, because that it's also involved, which of course this gentleman is talking about here on the on Twitter, talking about the utility of NFTs. That's also a part of the conversation. So I'm interested to see where this goes on what I just said, and I'm hoping what I can do is kind of like really clarify and set up, in some way set up a roadmap on how we can make those connections as far as human involvement and the volatility of the market, and try to stabilize that and keep it from going all up and down, whatever. Or if I'm not onto anything, hey, it was just a thought. But I'm trying to see how we can change things based on those critiques that this gentleman put forth on Twitter. So that's my thing, folks. Thank you for listening to me. I had a lot to say. It's probably one of the longer ones that I got into as far as the show is concerned. Please follow me on Twitter at Lyfeblood. Please follow me on IG. Even though I don't use IG a lot, I don't even use Facebook a lot. But I'm putting all my energy into getting this social media dial off the ground. But yeah, if you want to follow me and whatever that I post, please, you could do it there. You could follow me on YouTube, where I do post the show as well. You can subscribe, build it up. I think I got about 4,000 people that follow me across all social media platforms. At some, I'm not making it to the 50,000 follower mark, but it's a start, right? So I do appreciate you guys listening to me, and hopefully I made sense in this show. And you guys go walk away with something. So I'll see you guys next week. Peace, love, and hair grace. My wife said that was corny, but that's from the old. I think it was something else. I don't know, probably a statement or something like that. It's gonna, a positive saying to leave you guys with when I end the show. But whatever, we'll see what's going on. So thank you guys. I'm out of here, and I'll see you next week. Peace.
Yo, check it.
You just listened to GCOM Radio, powered by Lyfeblood.com for the global community.
We worldwide, baby.
See you in the next go round. From right here to your town, we out.